Hey guys, Zor here from ZorGameGeek.com. We're going to continue the painting series with these skeleton minis on base coating. I'm going to divide the base coating up over 3 different videos. One for each of the skeletons. There are slightly different colors. It's going to be very similar techniques, but the video got kind of long and I want to make these videos very digestible. So we're going to do 3 different videos on the skeletons. This is the first one. If you want to read more about how to paint miniatures and 5 techniques that I think all beginning miniature painters should know, learn, and practice, go to zorgamegeek.com/5. Again, zorgamegeek.com/5 onto the miniature painting. So as you can see here, I have my 3 skeletons that I primered in the primering video, and today we are going to talk about base coating. Base coating is the initial sort of coat you put on your miniatures to provide some color and depth. And as you can see, these miniatures do not have the standard round bases. And I have my Citadel handle here for painting, and it just barely fits in that direction. So from here, we're gonna do a base coat. I'm gonna base coat each of these skeletons with a different colored bone from the Master Paint series, which is the paint for, why am I drawing a blank? For the Bones collection of miniatures. And so this color here is yellowed bone. I'm also going to be using a graveyard bone. And then finally, splintered bone. These I obtained from the original Bones Kickstarter of miniatures from Reaper Miniatures. And then after that, I will be painting the bows a brown color. And I have 3 different brown colors for that. Then I will be, actually I have 2 different brown colors for the bows. And then we have the quiver and the straps, which I will be painting with the oiled leather. It's kind of faded there. Oiled leather, also from Reaper. Then the final step will be the washes. So I will do a black wash on one, a sepia shade on another, and then the umber wash on the third. So, all right, let's start with base coating. What I'm going to do is grab my Citadel shade brush. Actually, I'm not going to grab my Citadel shade brush, that is too thick. I am going to grab my Vallejo number 20 brush and put in the paint over here. And this is going to be the yellowed bone. I'm going to come over to my water cup here and wet the brush down and add it to, and get some paint on the brush. And start base coating this miniature. There we go. When base coating, you want to start from the deepest areas in terms of color. So by deepest, I mean the depth on the miniature, more towards the core, the center, and then work your way up. given that this is the first color, I am not being super careful about getting paint on structures that I don't want to be this bone color. And I am just getting the paint in. Get some more water on my brush. You can see that there is a skull pauldron on the upper shoulder, which is a nice little detail, but for the type of miniature that we're painting here, which is basically a minion skeleton, I don't know that it's worth the time and energy to try to do something special with that pauldron. Skeletons are a great first-time miniature to learn to paint on because they're usually pretty simple sculpts, and they are going to be in large mass, which means you can learn to paint, and any imperfections or irregularities are because that skeleton is beat up. It is because you can find all sorts of in-story reasons why this skeleton looks off and not quite right. But you can see here, compared to the white primer, that this yellowed bone color is a pretty stark difference. It is definitely a cream ivory type of color. Got to get the top of the collarbone here. I keep on hitting my camera arm with my paintbrush handle. And I realize I'm moving out of frame with my skeleton. So we're just trying to go through. And I put way too much paint in my palette, but that's okay. It's important to occasionally just get some water on your brush to keep the paint in the brush from drying as we work through this skeleton. Interesting, even has the tailbone modeled here. Get these fingers. Thing you have to keep in mind though, when you first come back out after wetting your brush down, is the paint might be a little too thin, and then you're going to have some coverage issues. But it will flow nicely, but those areas may need a second coat of paint once it dries. I haven't decided yet what colors I will use for the base here. It looks like grass or potentially sand. I don't think I'll do a sand color because that's going to be too close of a beigey to the bone of the skeleton. So I'm leaning towards some sort of dark mossy green. It also provides a nice contrast. So now I'm just looking through to see if I missed any spots. Looks like I got some here around the bow. Got it out of frame there. Oop, right here in the back of the skull and the back of the arm. Maybe here on the lower jaw. Hard to tell. Making sure I'm getting it into the eyeballs. There we have it. There is the first base coat. So the next step here is going to be the brown paint. I have those two browns, and then I'm going to do, this is Privateer's Press, and this is called Bloodstone paint as the third brown. That is a much more of a reddish brown color. So for the yellowed bone, part of the issues for picking your color of brown paint is also the wash. So the sepia wash is a yellowed wash, and I'm not likely going to use it on the yellow, the yellowed bone, because that's too much yellow on yellow action here. I am instead going to probably use the black wash to darken this figure up on that one. The sepia wash I'm going to use on the splintered bone to really show you that contrast, whereas the umber wash I'm going to use on the graveyard bone, as that's a little more brownish of a, and it's going to blend in a little bit better. So because of that, as I now think through my different browns, and the black, so my walnut brown here is a really dark brown. And because of that, the other washes may not be dark enough to provide that contrast. So while I don't want to do the sepia to have it be too yellow on yellow here, I am going to have the black wash with the walnut brown to make sure that there is the contrast needed between the dark spots and the deeper spots of the bow. As you can see, there is a little bit of texture to the bow staff. Another option, if you wanted to really make this a simple base coat, is you could say that bow staff is also made out of bone, and just paint it a colored bone. You can also see here, there's some details here at the tips or the ends of the bow staves. I am not going to worry about that level of detail for what we're doing here. So that is the plan for So we're going to do the black wash with the walnut brown on the yellow. Then let's see here. We have the sepia with the splintered bone. I'm going to probably use just the plain muddy brown for that sepia wash, primarily because I'm curious to see how those two look together. And then for the brown wash, the umber wash, I'm going to use the redstone, so the brown wash will brown up this maybe a little bit too red of paint if it was just my base coat. So we're going to come back now to the walnut brown. And I definitely don't need, let's shake this a little bit more, definitely don't need, whoops, shake without hitting the camera arm. Don't need a lot of this paint. All right, that is coming out a little bit thick. It's a sign that I maybe should have shooken it more, but also that means that I can control it better by adding a little bit more water. Okay. So this is the walnut brown. I'm just using the same 20 brush. I could go for a smaller, finer brush, and I may do that for the oiled leather. And I'm going to start over here. Whoops. Make sure I'm getting in frame. Now this is where I'm trying to be a little bit more precise around the hands. This is where it's important to have good flow to your paint. And you can see here I'm going just with the direction of the brush, and I'm just coming on down. I'm going to add a little bit more paint here. My first stroke is always going to be away from where I'm going because there may be excess paint and it may overflow the area. I'm going to turn. And you can see that I'm working my way sort of down towards that ridge. And then the other area is down here near where the bow staff meets the leg bone. This one, while it's important to be precise, it's a little less important because that's a deep recess. And it's going to be a little darker in there anyway. So we're going to, and then the same thing now, we got a little bit of a detail here sticking out. So this one, just going to work around there. I'm going to get the underneath side. And we're going to come back here to the front. I'm going to bring in a different angle. Got a little bit of paint onto the leg bone, but again, that's a deep recess. I don't know if that's going to be super visible. And now we're just filling in the white spaces. Looks like I need a little bit more paint on or water on my brush. Looks like it's not flowing well. Here I'm going to be trying to be a little bit more precise. Okay, now we're dealing with the top of the bow here, bow staff. It's almost hard to get too much paint on your brush. See, this is a really dark brown, especially as it dries. That black wash may not provide much contrast, but it's my best hope for providing contrast. I may come back and dry brush this with this oak, dark oak, walnut brown. Got my hardwoods wrong. This walnut brown, and mix in maybe a little bit of the muddy brown to lighten it up. Now I am just looking for, so the other thing that I am going to do here, and just get a little bit more water on my brush to help it flow, is the arrow shafts. That is a core deeper recess, so I'm going to paint in there, and because it's that deeper area, I don't care as much if it gets on to the adjacents, except that this is a really dark color. So, oops. I want to try my best oops, I think I had a little bit of an errant brush stroke. So if you have too much of an errant brush stroke, what you can do is get some water onto your brush. Oops, that made things worse. It's flowing around. I screwed that up. You want to get now a paper towel. What I should have done is gotten a dry brush, not a wet brush. I went opposites. So I definitely am going to need a darker color for these fletchings, as I basically wipe it off. But there's some natural shading in there. But I did wipe off a little bit of the arrow shafts themselves. So I'm just, all right, I'm gonna leave that alone at this point and move on to my next brown. Right, final step for the base coating, and base coating is typically the part here that takes the longest. And that final step, well, actually I get two steps. Yeah. I probably won't go on camera the painting of the bases or of the quivers, but we're gonna do the oiled leather here. And let's find a good little spot here for the oiled leather. Now this one I'm gonna have a bit more because I'm gonna be using this across all three of the miniatures. And now we are coming over to the yellow one. Okay. brush here a little bit with the paint. Wick it off on my paper towel. And let's see here. Let's see, is this, nope, it's not flowing like that other one was. And that's a good thing. Around. I don't know if I got the base of this. I did. Keeps on wanting. That one that is leaning likes to fall over. That's the problem. Right. So again, I just got fresh paint. So I'm going to start by painting away from the edges, just in case it does want to overflow. I can judge for myself what the paint is doing. Right, trying to get this. Strap painted up and over. Need a little bit more coverage there. Okay, and then it looks like there's a nice white line here across the front. I just want to brush in. Okay. So then we're going to get the last strap. All right, I'm going to call that good enough. So now, oops, that just fell right out. We have this quiver. All right, there you have it, the first video on base coating a skeleton miniature. There's going to be a second one and a third one, and we're going to have some videos after that on shade or washing your miniatures and then dry brushing them. If you want to learn more, go to ZordGameGeek.com/5. Again, ZordGameGeek.com/5. Please hit like and subscribe on the videos below. And until next time, keep gaming and keep painting.